The expectations which are building as you're just about 22 minutes away from the clock to strike 11 a.m. and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman to tell us what she's holding in her digital Bahi Khata and what it means for all of us as citizens of the country and of course for industry and the economy at large. So let's take this conversation forward. Before we slipped into the break, we were trying to understand from our guests here on what citizens really get for the tax that they pay. And can they expect an improvement in their quality of life? But before that, let's quickly look at what constitutes the rupee. Where does the rupee really come from and where does the rupee really go? And in the context of that, we will, I'm sure, understand also how important the entire concept of taxation is. And there on your screens, you have it, that the rupee is really made up of all these elements which include taxes, which includes GST, which includes both direct and indirect taxes, which includes the custom duties, corporate tax, GST, as well as the union excise taxes. But the large chunk of this actually comes from borrowings. Borrowings constitute almost 24% of the rupee, but next in line is actually the income tax. And the income tax, even though we have just about 9 crore Indians paying income tax, individuals paying income tax, a good 22% of the government's revenue actually comes from income tax. O.P. Yadav ji हमारे साथ में जुड़े हुए हैं, former commissioner of income tax. O.P. यादव जी, हमें समझाइए, अगर 22% हमारा रुपी का कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन टैक्सेस से है, इंडिविजुअल टैक्सेस से है, उस टैक्स के बदले में क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ के कारण के प्रति इंडियंस को क्या मिलता है सर?
ये हमेशा सवाल आता है जब भी बजट आता है, क्योंकि अभी बात हुई सुपर रिच को टैक्स करने की, राइट? तो यहाँ पर सुपर रिच को मैं पहले क्लियर कर दूं कि वी हैव ऑलरेडी प्रोविजन ऑफ सरचार्ज. जब इनकम बढ़ती है आपके सरचार्ज बढ़ता है,
एंड दैट इज व्हाट टेक्स अप द टोटल आउटपुट टू अबाउट 37%.
35-37%.
दैट्स राइट.
अब बात ये आ रही है कि गवर्नमेंट को इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलप करना है, गवर्नमेंट को रोड बनाना है, गवर्नमेंट को डिफेंस देखना है, एजुकेशन देखना है, हेल्थ देखना है, तो उसके लिए एक्सपेंडिचर कहाँ से आएगा?
सर देखिए, लेकिन मिडिल क्लास जो टैक्स दे रहा है उसका तो यही कंसर्न है ना. मैं कब तक औरों को सब्सिडाइज करता रहूंगा? अगर मुझे अपने टैक्स का वर्थ सर्विसेज इस देश में नहीं मिलती, हाउ डू वी प्रिवेंट फ्लाइट ऑफ कैपिटल?
मुझे लगता है एक बात मैं ये भी कहना चाहूंगी, एयर क्वालिटी देखिए अपने आसपास. दूसरे, हेल्थ क्वालिटी से मेरा मतलब है हेल्थ इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की क्वालिटी क्या है. अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं कि इनकम टैक्स नई रिजीम में हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस को हम लेके भी जाएं, health care का infrastructure,
government hospitals in the first place.
There is a simple solution to this. Yadav ji asked, पैसा कहाँ से आएगा? I think it is not so much a question of पैसा कहाँ से आएगा, rather than looking at two things. One is deployment of the capital efficiency, and second, collection. Now we know that both are like suboptimal, because of bureaucracy and corruption, all those factors. In terms of collection, there are so many e-governance initiatives that you can deploy at the state level or at the central level also, which will enable collection of. If I just take one example as, let's say, land, it is one of the biggest sources of leakage for our government in terms of revenue. Whether it is like your property tax or whatever, why can't we bring in e-governance and privatize like we've done Passport Seva? Why can't we have a consortium of private sector companies that are handed over this job of collecting revenue for government?
Right.
Why does it that we go with the same system? Why? Because the system, someone is benefiting from that system.
And
there is no incentive to change it.
The system is protecting everybody in the system, because the buck doesn't stop at any one individual or any one department.
Absolutely.
And that is one reason that government is talking about, पूरी तरह से custom duty के structure को, क्योंकि उन्हें लग रहा है वहाँ बड़ी leakages हो रही है. Custom duty के structure को बदलना है और इस बार direct tax नहीं बल्कि कस्टम ड्यूटी को रिहॉल किया जाएगा.
आप देख रहे हैं कि इवन डायरेक्ट टैक्स के फ्रंट में जो टैक्स का कंप्लायंस बढ़ा है, जो हमने नजेस देखे हैं, जो उसमें भी कुछ कमियां हैं. क्योंकि क्या होता है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल अभी रिवाइज रिटर्न और बिलेटेड रिटर्न फाइल करने का टाइम था, तब डिपार्टमेंट ने सब लोगों को मेल भेजे, मैसेज भेजे. दैट शुड हैव बीन डन अर्ली, तो लोगों को मौका मिले समझने का और कंप्लाई करने का.
But sir, 25 lakh people complied after those nudges were given by the government. 9 crore total number of taxpayers. 6 crore out of them are filing nil tax returns. So obviously the burden is on a very small section of the population, isn't it?
That's correct. Even the article which you are discussing, in that sake only 2% are paying the taxes.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So that is correct. But I am again, some issues I'm discussing.
So I think
my dear friend has
that
said
there is a leakage in the entire system. पानी की पाइप जो है बहुत जगह से उसमें जो है चिपकियां लगाने की.
Defend the government if you don't mind, right? Let me defend let me put the contrarian view.
Okay,
right?
that's a surprise. Go ahead.
See, I pay a lot of
You're
taxes.
usually on the citizen side.
No,
This
no,
time
no,
you're on the
So
government
listen,
side.
none of us mind paying taxes if the taxes are well used and well utilized.
Yes.
To the credit of this government and probably the previous government, over the last 10-15 years, there have been a lot of initiatives to reduce leakage.
Yeah.
If you look at direct benefit transfer, the JAM Trinity,
That's right.
there
No
was the
doubt.
old
Of course,
Trinity.
of course.
Absolutely, I agree
Also,
with that.
the reduction of fiscal deficit suggests that wasteful government spending on central initiatives and incentives and schemes are coming down.
Coming down. Fair enough.
Now, where is leakage left in the system, right? I think there's a big leakage left at the state government. If you look
Yes.
at the economic survey, the onus of the fiscal deficit or the debt to GDP reduction now moves to the state because the states are no longer being as sensible or frugal with our money.
But then Barnick states are also complaining that the devolution is actually not happening accurately. They are not receiving the money in
But
time.
that does not
and
explain
overall
all
their
the
conditions-
schemes, all the schemes and all the freebies and all. See, let's look at the state balance sheet, right?
Yeah.
I think nearly 40% of Indian states have stressed balance sheets,
Right.
right? So again, I think the push is instead of see, what we should not do is to squeeze the small amount of people like us who pay taxes
Correct.
more,
That is exactly
Yes.
what's happening.
Yeah.
but focus on ensuring that the taxes we collect are spent more efficiently.
Exactly
And
what I said,
in
yes.
general, if we are successful in creating more employment, creating more jobs, there will be more taxpayers who also come in.
Right.
So it is not about getting more taxes from a small group of people, but creating more taxpayers, which will only happen if there are
If there is
investments.
higher income.
Higher income, which
comes
come from
higher
higher investments and jobs.
Correct.
So that's the virtuous cycle we have to create.
And that is the impossible trinity that we are
know the
talking
So,
about.
so
right?
Karthik, if you showed the graphic on where the income comes from, 1
Yeah.
rupee comes from. If you look at where the money
Where
is
the money is spent.
you'll see that we are just spending most of our money servicing debt,
Absolutely.
government
Yes,
debt.
exactly.
Right.
So,
So
debt
where is the
highest
capital
sort of
available to
intake and
invest?
the highest outgo for
Yeah.
us. But I want to quickly bring in even Vibha Dhawan into this conversation. And Vibha, even it is important to understand again in the context of flight of talent from this country. So some people call it tax terrorism. I think some people also, there is at least anecdotal data that suggests that there are many people who can afford to go out of this country and live in another country. It's happening because of better quality of life, and the first tick mark for them in their box is the quality of air. So as far
That's
as
right.
quality of air is concerned, do you think this should be that moment, 2026, where again, come October, come November, we are not really crying about extremely high AQI levels. We have seen that there is some policy initiative which is making our air cleaner. Let's start at least with the most basic fundamental right to breathe quality air.
Absolutely, and that is one of the most important points. I'll say in my generation, people were migrating out of the country because they were looking for better jobs. Today in India, we have an ecosystem where there is enough opportunities to work, but then it is especially those who are residing in cities like Delhi. Do we want to give this kind of air, this kind of life to our children? And therefore, they are migrating out. And we ourselves, because if we look at the health burden, most of us in these 3 to 4 months, we are basically taking so much of cough syrup and cough tablets, and we are suffering. Look at the hospitals, the asthma cases. So it is really unbreathable air, and foreigners who visit us, they also tell us the same. How do you live in this country? So which is
refusing
very
to come to
bad.
the country. I mean, a badminton player refuses to come to India for the third time, says he doesn't feel safe breathing the air in New Delhi.
Absolutely, which is true. And you yourself, you ask, like for my grandchildren, every day I think about they are playing cricket. Am I doing the right thing? So that is really a problem. And you are absolutely right. We start talking about or looking for band-aids when the air quality goes bad. Thereafter, we tend to forget what needs to be the long-term plan. And unless and until, and we are talking about wealth creation, income tax, all these things, they are important. But ultimately, what I want to give to my next generation is a planet where they can live.
Yeah.
And that is where I'll say all these things, green transition, energy transition, because if you want to clean your air, it's not simply that you are saying go back to the Stone Age. We are doing a portion. We know how much is coming from automobile, what is coming from air travel. We know what are the causes of those air pollution, but therefore we also have to treat those causes. How can they be more greener?
Right. And-
whether it is electric vehicles, whether it is electricity
Right.
for cooking, whatever. And that is where long-term policy and investments. So it is not air alone.
Right.
You have to look at crop residue management if you want clean air in Delhi.